My sister-in-law brought her golden child drama to my wedding and had a huge tantrum. So here's my story. I'm 28 years old and there's this girl. Let's call her Emily. All right, Emily and I have been together for a long time right from the start. Now Emily's family is pretty cool with me, but her brother, let's name him Jake, is just a total pain to deal with. To give you the full picture, Emily is the oldest kid in her family. Her folks came from Europe, and then 3 years after Emily was born, along came Jake. Emily has shared stories about how their parents are super strict about school grades. They always pushed her and Jake to be at the top of their class, aiming for the best scores possible. But here's the thing. Emily wasn't really into the whole studying scene. She was more of an athlete, really good at sports. Plus, she was super into chess, joining the chess club at school, and even hanging out after school to play. But her parents didn't get it. They thought chess was a total waste of time, something anybody could do, and they kept nagging her to quit and focus on her studies. Emily was smart, but not in the way her parents wanted her to be. Jake, on the other hand, was exactly what they wanted. He was all about the books, always nailing his exams and spending his nights buried in homework. As you can guess, he was favored more by their parents. Emily has told me how her parents would always compare their grades and reward Jake for being better. For example, they would allow him to have a grand birthday party, have sleepovers with his friends, and buy him bigger presents to show their affection. However, when it came to Emily, they would tell her regularly that they were ashamed of her marks. When it came to her birthdays, they would refuse to spend any money and tell her how she needs to work harder if she wants to earn a birthday party and gifts. Even writing about this makes me so angry because I have watched Emily break down in front of me while she told me stories from her childhood, and how her parents always treated Jake better. He was the golden child in the family, and he clearly enjoyed it. He would put her down at every chance he got and make fun of her marks. He never had any respect for her as an older sibling, and I think this disrespect still continues today. When it was time for Emily to go to college, her parents made it clear that they could not afford to pay for both of their college tuitions, so they could only pay for her brother's tuition fees, and she needed to apply for scholarships or take a student loan. This completely shocked Emily, and they had a huge fight. She went off on her parents about how they always treated her and why they even had her if they didn't like her. Her parents told her how they had made so many sacrifices over the years for their children, so now it was time for Emily to grow up. Jake agreed with their parents and told Emily how she was clearly not the intelligent one in the family, so she needed to just suck it up and sacrifice for his sake. He also called her a bunch of other things, like a loser. It was after this fight that Emily realized her parents would always continue to favor her brother more than her. When she got admission to her college to study computer science with scholarships, she decided to move out and go low contact with her family. Her parents never came to see her off or help her move into the dorm, which is so heartbreaking to even think about. Over the years, they would sometimes talk, but Emily would mostly keep it short. When she was graduating cum laude, her parents wanted to come and cheer for her, but Emily forbade them from coming. They started to cry about how she was their daughter and they wanted to be there for her big moment. Emily reminded them about how they had not even bothered to pay for her college tuition while they paid for Jake's tuition, so they were not allowed to be a part of her achievements anymore. They fought a bit, but in the end, her parents agreed to stay away. This is how their relationship had been for a long time. Now I'm a builder, and I have done a master in urban planning from one of the top universities in our country. Unlike Emily's parents, my parents were relatively easy on me. I'm an only child, so I pretty much got all the attention. My parents are professors, so all my life I was encouraged to study what I like and have other hobbies as well. I have to admit that I was lucky to never face any comparison. My parents have always had my back. When I met Emily, she and I were working from the same office complex but on different floors. Her company was on the 3rd floor and mine was on the 8th. We would usually meet in the elevators and have mutual friends who would hang out as a group. This is how I met her during a party, and we hit it off. Emily was charming, sweet, and genuinely kind. She is the sort of girlfriend who brings me flowers every month, brings me my favorite cookies when I have a rough day, cooks for me, and is not shy to tell me how much she loves me. Now, I'm a sucker when it comes to romance, so it didn't take us long before I moved in with her. It made more sense since we did spend a lot of time together at each other's places. Now, I've heard horror stories from my buddies about how some of their girlfriends don't help them out around the house, but Emily is the complete opposite. She is more of an OCD than me and deep cleans our home every weekend. We share and divide tasks. For example, if she cooks, then I clean up, or if she does the laundry, then I fold it. This is how it has always been between us. When it came time to meet each other's parents, she told me how she had been pretty much low contact with her parents for a long time, and only talked to them whenever necessary since they never treated her well. She recounted to me all her childhood stories. However, when she did decide to reach out to her parents about me, they were ecstatic to talk to her, and immediately arranged a lunch date with us during the weekend. I was a bit nervous to meet her parents, but this was an important step for us, so I wanted to put in my 100%. Her parents were unexpectedly warm towards me, and once they heard about my background, they became even more polite. Looking back, yes, it's true that they started to like me because of my professional success, but I didn't mind as I wanted to impress them. Her parents talked to me very frankly and told me how after Emily had gone low contact with them over the years after college, they had been thinking and realizing that they needed to be better to her. They told me how grateful they were that I came into her life. Otherwise, she might have never reached out to them. They even awkwardly apologized to her, which completely surprised Emily. It was nice to see that her parents were finally making an effort in the right direction. However, when Jake arrived, the mood changed. Emily had not been informed that he would even be coming, so she was a bit miffed. Her parents started to justify saying how they had decided to call him since they felt this would be the perfect time to let go of the past so their family could move on. Her mother continued to tell her how her brother was here only because he was happy for her. Jake politely gave me a handshake, and he just seemed super shy. At first impression, he completely ignored Emily as if she didn't even exist and didn't say a single thing to her. When her parents started to brag to him about my background, his behavior changed. He started to question me about my work and the university I went to, and would then subtly mock how urban planners are affecting the environment. He even asked me at one point how I felt about murdering trees, which shocked me. It was like he wanted to put me down in front of her parents because he just could not handle the fact that they liked me. Throughout our lunch, he was passive-aggressive. He disagreed with or corrected everything I said, no matter how mundane. When we were finished with lunch, my father-in-law wanted to pay, but Emily was insisting that she wanted to take care of the bill. Out of nowhere, Jake interrupted, saying I should be the one paying for it since they were all here because of me. He taunted that since I was earning so much, I could make good use of my money at least. This seriously offended me as I did quite well, but he had no right to talk about me that way. I think her parents noticed my facial expressions too. They immediately reprimanded him, and father-in-law told him that he was being extremely rude to me since I was just a guest. Mother-in-law agreed and told Jake to shut his mouth. He clearly didn't get tea like that, got up from his seat, and walked out of the restaurant, pissed. Emily's parents apologized to me multiple times for his behavior and told me how he takes some time to warm up to strangers. I decided to let it go, thinking that I would never have to interact with him anyway. And for the sake of Emily, I should keep it together. This should have been my first red flag about him. Unlike Emily's family, my family absolutely adored Emily and loved getting to know her. My parents were happy that we were living together and would check on me regularly. Over the years of dating, I have noticed that Jake is always the first one to view my stories on social media. I have a public account where I post about my work and achievements. I just have a few hundred followers, so it's easy for me to notice when he views my stories every day but does not interact or follow me. When Emily's parents started to meet with us more often, Jake's obsession with me only grew stronger. We had a family message group between me, Emily, her parents, and Jake. It was mostly inactive unless we all met up and clicked pictures, so then we would send these pictures in the group. Jake never showed up to meet with us anymore after the first time, but he could see all the pictures in our group, and this probably upset him even more. Once, he sent a Facebook link to the group asking me if this was me. Curiously, I clicked it to see that it was a photo from years ago with my then high school girlfriend in the picture. We were hugging, and she had uploaded it when we had been dating. I had completely forgotten about the photo, and I don't even know how he found it, or why he would even send it to the group. But I was not going to shy away from the truth, so I told him that this was me and that she was an old girlfriend. Jake immediately replied, saying how I seemed awfully close and that I should ask my ex-girlfriend to remove this picture from her Facebook since it was not appropriate anymore. I was taken aback by how ridiculous he sounded. First of all, he had stalked me so much that he had ended up on my ex-girlfriend's page and then sent the photo link to the group knowingly and then blamed me for it. Thankfully, Emily, who had probably been reading our messages in the group, replied, saying this was a completely normal picture and that she had no issues with the picture posted years ago. Jake replied back passive-aggressively, saying how she should date someone with better standards. I was so pissed reading his message that I would have ripped his head off if he was standing in front of me. Emily messaged back to him that she did have better standards, since I earned more than 4 times his salary. Now I know this must have hurt since Jake worked as a web designer, and her parents had mentioned how he didn't earn enough for him to even move out. Jake immediately exited the group in anger and later called Emily, screaming and crying to her that she had no right to insult him in the group and that he was so done with us. Emily didn't timty care, and this made him even angrier. I don't know what happened, but Emily's parents did call and apologize to us later. In the evening, they apologized to me. They told me how they had talked to him and that he was going to be better moving forward. They apologized to me for him and told me that they had no issues with the picture whatsoever. It was very awkward to be talking to my in-laws about my ex-girlfriend from years ago, but I was glad that they were not like Jake. After this incident, Jake pretty much stayed away from us. He never joined the group or bothered me again. A few months later, we were shocked to find out that he had eloped with a girl and got married in Vegas. Her parents were extremely shocked and pissed that they didn't even know who this girl was, nor were they invited to the wedding. It turns out that Jake had been dating an older woman, Karen, who was 20 years older than him for quite some time. They met at work when Karen was still married. This affair led to Karen's husband divorcing her. When their divorce was finalized, Jake eloped with her because he knew his parents would never allow him to marry an older divorcee or forgive him for having an affair with a married woman. He had kept all of this from his parents for several years. He never even told them about any of this since they were already pissed that she was so much older than him. Emily and I only found out about Karen's history when she stalked the woman on her LinkedIn and Instagram. Apart from the affair part, we were happy for him since we hoped he would turn over a new leaf after their marriage, although we refrained from contacting him. However, a few weeks later I received a text from my brother-in-law unexpectedly. The message went something like this: I know in the past I haven't been nice to you, and I would like to apologize. I have to admit that I didn't fully accept you as my family before, but now I've gotten past the prejudice I had against you and would like to get to know you better. I would like to have dinner with you and Emily this weekend. Let me know if you both are available. I showed the message to Emily, and she was wary about going, but I thought this might give us a chance to work everything out. And since he was extending an olive branch first, we discussed it, and I convinced her to go. I let him know as well that we would be coming, and he seemed happy about it. When we met Jake, he warmly welcomed us into his new place with Karen. It was clear that Karen was a wealthy woman since she was much older than all of us. She had a modern home with a lot of gadgets, and Karen, after introducing herself, showed my wife around the place. Karen apparently also had a dedicated shelf for all her collectibles. While the women were busy, Jake and I got to talking. He apologized to me for his behavior and told me how after marrying Karen, he had changed. I politely smiled to let him know that it was all water under the bridge. Jake then went on to explain why he hated me. He told me how I had changed Emily and that she seemed more confident and happier after meeting me. I pointed out to him how this was a good thing, but he said how his sister had been in low contact with them for so long, but only reached out because of me, so he felt jealous that I could make her do such a thing. Although what he told me didn't make any sense to me, I simply nodded since I wanted to get this over with. Then he started to talk about how much happier he was now, so he could finally let go of his jealousy. He talked about how rich Karen was and that he never had to work ever again. He brought up her various assets and how many cars she had, even though I never even asked about it. He then asked me how my work was going, and I told him about my recent promotion and how fulfilling my work was. I genuinely love designing, so sometimes I can ramble on about my work. Jake immediately changed the subject and started to ask me invasive questions like when I would get married to his sister. I told him that we had discussed it, but we were in no hurry because we both believed that things happen at the right time. Jake scoffed and told me that this was all BS and that I needed to push Emily to propose to me so that I don't get too old later to have children. This made me laugh, and I told him how Emily and I never wanted kids, and we were fine with how our relationship was going. This made Jake's eyes widen in shock, and he started to say how, as a man, it was my duty to have children, and even asked me why I was with Emily if I didn't want to give her children. I felt so irritated with his invasiveness and told him that his sister and I were adults enough to decide what we wanted. He then got pissed and started yelling for Emily. When Emily and Karen came running into the room while I sat feeling shocked by his behavior, Jake demanded Emily tell him if she had any idea about the type of man she was marrying since I had no interest in continuing his bloodline. Emily laughed at his words, just like I had done a few moments ago, and asked if he realized how ridiculous he sounded right now. Jake got even angrier and raised his voice, saying that he was going to tell their parents and that they would never allow her to marry me. Emily yelled back that no one could prevent her from marrying me if she wanted to, and that because of his narcissistic and controlling behavior, she never wanted to ever get back in touch with him. They were getting more heated, so I asked Emily if we could leave, and she agreed. Karen apologized to us repeatedly while Jake stood there glaring at me. Later, in our car ride home, I burst out laughing since I felt really bad about what he had told me. I asked Emily seriously if she wanted to have children, but she assured me that she never wanted any and that I should not allow Jake's backward thinking to mess with my head. She assured me that if she had wanted anything different, then she would not even be with me. I felt a bit better after that. I don't know if Jake ever did talk to their parents about what I had told him, but thankfully they never reached out to me saying anything. Emily's parents have continued to meet with us whenever they could, and they have never brought up anything he told them. After this incident, I blocked Jake from all my social media because I was truly done with him. This year, Emily proposed to me at our favorite date spot, and ever since then, we have been busy with our wedding preparations. Our parents are really happy for us and have congratulated us on our upcoming nuptials. Jake did find out from his parents and sent Emily a text message simply saying, "I hope you know what you're doing," which pissed her off. I also felt sad that he had continued to hold a grudge against me to this day. Now, this is where things got even more complicated with Jake. 2 months back, my wife had a headache and wasn't feeling too good, so I offered to whip up her favorite dish. Realizing we were short on some ingredients, I decided to hit the grocery store. The first one I went to didn't have everything I needed, so I ended up driving around a bit until I found another store in a different part of town. As I strolled through the shopping complex on my way to the store, I happened to pass by a cafe, and to my surprise, I spotted my brother-in-law cozying up with some woman. At first I thought it might be Karen, but after a second look I realized the woman looked closer to his age with blonde hair. They were holding hands and sharing kisses, acting all giggly and chatty like teenagers. This was quite a shocker for me because, as far as I knew, Jake was still married to Karen. If they had broken up, my wife's parents would have definitely informed us. In a state of disbelief, I couldn't resist taking a few pictures as my eyes confirmed what I was witnessing. He never even noticed me as he was so busy with the woman. Later, when I came back home, my hands were shaking. Emily knew something was wrong and came to talk to me. I spilled out everything and she was taken aback just like me. She asked me 2 to 3 times if I was sure about what I had seen. I nodded yes and even showed her pictures. She saw each picture closely and agreed that it was definitely not Karen. We discussed if we should talk to Karen about this, but I didn't know if this was a good idea since I didn't want Jake to fight with her again. Emily assured me that she would be careful and have a talk with Karen woman to woman and told me how, as Jake's wife, Karen deserved to know the truth. So Emily talked to Karen privately. It turns out that Karen was shocked to find out that Jake had been cheating on her with a much younger woman. But what is even more shocking is that Jake is getting married again. Yes, getting married again. Apparently, they had just found out, and he has kept this on the down low since then because he was waiting for the right time to announce it. Karen was floored that Jake could do something like this to her and thankful to Emily for telling her. She begged us to not tell Jake anything about this and that she would take care of it soon. Emily agreed, and since then we have kept our noses out of it. Now, we had our wedding last week. Emily's parents convinced us to invite Jake also since he was family and told us how it would look bad if he was missing. We agreed just to shut them up, and I firmly told them that they needed to talk to him and make sure that he didn't make a scene at our wedding. Her parents agreed, and we believed them. On the day of our wedding, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Our ceremony went well, and we moved on to the reception. When it came to giving speeches, my parents gave a beautiful speech about me, and my dad teared up saying how his baby girl had finally grown up. Dad also gave a speech and thanked me for bringing the family close, which was so sweet to hear, honestly. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my brother-in-law attempting to grab the microphone from my father-in-law. While it might seem innocent to others, I know him well enough to not take any chances. I had already tipped off my groomsmen to instruct the DJ to cut the mic if Jake ever tried to take control. When Jake attempted to speak into the microphone, he quickly realized that his voice wasn't carrying, and he glanced around. Emily and I simply acted like we had no idea. Later, when my best man Dave took the mic from Jake and the DJ turned it on, Jake must have realized that we deliberately cut him off. He started to scream in the middle of my best man's speech about how dare we not let him speak and how he had an important announcement. He tried to grab the mic from Dave, who refused to give it to him. We then watched in horror as Jake angrily got up onto his chair and started to speak loudly about how he had known all along how jealous I was about him and that I was such a control freak to not let him speak at my wedding. People watched him in confusion and shock, and he then continued to announce that he was getting married again and wanted to reveal this today since he felt this was the perfect time with all his loved ones gathered around. He then smiled and looked around, hoping for people to stop and congratulate him. However, everyone just looked around awkwardly. Emily's parents whispered to Jake to not embarrass them further and that he needed to sit back down in his seat. But this just made Jake go red in embarrassment. He glanced at me and started to yell if I was happy for doing this to my own wife's family, and that this is why he never wanted his sister to marry a control freak like me. Emily, who had tried to remain calm for my sake, got up from her chair and looked like she was going to give him the thrashing of his life. However, before we could react, Karen, who was sitting beside Jake, took the mic from Dave and apologized to us for Jake's behavior and then congratulated us on our wedding. Then she turned to Jake and told him that she never wanted to do this publicly, but he needed to be taught a lesson. Jake looked at her confusingly while Karen went on to say how it was true that Jake was indeed getting married again, but that she was not the one he was marrying. The crowd gasped, and I couldn't help but cringe, knowing where this was heading. Jake's expression turned sour. Karen turned to him and announced, "Let's first figure out who you're marrying. then worry about the announcement," and smirked at him. Emily's parents, who were silent, asked what she meant, and this is when she showed them pictures from her phone about how Jake had been cheating on her for the past 2 months with another woman. Thankfully, Karen never once threw Emily and me under the bus and simply continued to say how she had become suspicious about his behavior and had hired a PI who had clicked all these pictures. Emily's parents glanced through the pictures in disgust and horror while the guests continued to whisper. Jake sat speechless throughout all of this, perhaps trying to comprehend the fact that he could not hide the truth anymore. Emily then seized the opportunity and asked Jake to get out of our wedding, saying she was embarrassed by being related to a man like him. He burst out crying, gathering up his things, and left. After this debacle, we tried to save the rest of the wedding, but everyone was just too riled up about what Jake had done to Karen and us. All anyone could talk about was his affair and his new engagement. It was really embarrassing for us and Emily's parents as well. Since then, I've been getting emails from random addresses which clearly belong to my brother-in-law, threatening me that he wants to finish me because apparently this is all my fault, and that I should have just let him announce his engagement so he would not have been publicly humiliated. I have shown these messages to Emily, and she believes we have done nothing wrong, and that this was all his own doing. She might be biased, so here I am asking if I was too harsh on my brother-in-law and not allowing him to announce his engagement. Wow! When I posted this, I hoped a few people would tell me if I did anything wrong. For now, there are hundreds of comments on my post calling my brother-in-law crazy. This post has blown up in a few days. First of all, thank you for showing me that he is as crazy as I have always thought him to be. To answer some of your questions, yes, Karen has informed us that she will be getting a divorce from Jake. Yes, I will be forwarding all screenshots of his emails to Karen, which will definitely come in handy for her court proceedings. Now, we haven't yet talked with Emily's parents because we are still on our honeymoon, and this is quite a heavy topic, so we plan on meeting them face-to-face for this conversation. Yes, my parents and my relatives were just as shocked as everyone, and my parents continue to check up on me every day as they are shaken up by how Jake behaved towards me. I think for such a long time I hoped that he and I would become at least cordial, that I forgot to notice just how manipulative and narcissistic he truly is. It is only now, when my family is pointing it out and assuring me that they have my back, that I feel confident enough in my decision to cut him out of our lives even if Emily's parents might resist it. So we got a chance to talk with Emily's parents now that we are back from our honeymoon. They are extremely embarrassed, to say the least. They have informed us that they have cut off Jake, which was completely unexpected for us to hear. They continue to tell us how Jake wanted to move back in with them since Karen kicked him out, but they refused to even let him in. In the end, he had to go and stay with one of his friends. Emily informed her parents that what Jake had done at our wedding was unforgivable, and moving forward, we would like no contact with him whatsoever. If they ever changed their minds and wanted us to include Jake again, then we would also cut them off if we had to. Emily's mother started to cry, talking about how painful all of this was and that she never expected Jake to do something like this. I don't know how true they will remain to their word, but I'm glad that my wife is a no-nonsense person, unlike me. So I know she will never allow him back into our lives. I'm glad that we are done with Jake completely. It has been 8 months since my last update, and I just wanted to update you all that Karen has finally divorced Jake. Karen informed us that Jake did admit to everything towards the end. He confessed that he had been seeing this woman on the side, and it was purely physical, but he got engaged. He never wanted any relationship with her, so he had hoped that he could get away with it. Since he was at fault for having an affair and they didn't have any children, he would not be getting any alimony from her due to this. Jake begged Karen to let him keep one of her cars, at least as a keepsake, but Karen refused. He then started to cry about how he had no one to depend on during his engagement since the woman he was seeing had abandoned him also. But Karen let him know that it was none of her business anymore. We continue to remain in touch with Karen despite her divorce. Emily and she have grown closer in the past few months, and they sometimes meet during the weekend to hang out. Emily's parents have not talked to Jake, so I am guessing he is truly alone. For his sake, I hope he makes the right decisions moving forward. Since then, things have been much calmer in our lives. Emily and I are looking forward to the future without any of Jake's drama hanging over us. We have learned to cherish the supportive people in our lives and maintain our distance from those who bring negativity. It's been a rough journey, but I believe we have come out stronger on the other side. Emily, despite her flaws, has stood by me through this entire ordeal, showing me that our relationship can withstand even the toughest challenges.